No introduction needed, I guess. We'll just jump right into it. This is a really rapid fire day. Well, cool. We'll just keep that theme going, and definitely keep maybe the theme a little more intimate, a little more casual. Quickly, before we get going, I'll get into it a little more. My name's Talin Wadsworth, and I'm the lead designer for Adobe XD at Adobe. So I'm here to tell you a little bit more about what we do and how we've been doing it for the last few years. So this is a little behind the scenes, but this talk is more, as I more commonly call it, is designing a design tool for designers, which is a really geeky job, and I'm really lucky that this is like my day-to-day job. I get to go and actually design and build the tool that I use every day to design and build that tool. So it gets a little weird, as my colleague Alex out here in the audience can attest along with me. So quickly, for those of you who don't know, Adobe XD is a brand new tool from Adobe, and it's a tool that's really focused on creating great interactive user experiences from an end-to-end perspective. So this is an app where you can design, prototype, and share with your users or your stakeholders all within one application. So it's pretty exciting, and I'm going to give you a little behind the scenes peek about how we got there. But first, I just wanted to give a shout out to the amazing team that I get to work with every day. This is the Adobe XD design team, and these are some of the most talented people I know, and one of them is here in the audience with me. And so like I said, I lead this team from a creative perspective, and our challenge is just to make a great product and to work really closely together with our partners every day. But we also have kind of like a bigger mission, as we're also a part of the Adobe design organization, and that is all the designers who are working on products at Adobe all are in the same group, which gives us a pretty unique perspective, I think, as anyone knows, kind of within a large company, how you can have these silos, these organizations that aren't really connected. But our group really sits at the nexus of all of the major ones at Adobe. So Creative Cloud, we have designers working on all of our creative tools, as well as our marketing. Actually, I have the wrong logo. Our Experience Cloud, I should say. Digital marketing analytics. We also have our designers work on those products, as well as our suite of Acrobat products. So we really are one of the only Adobe-wide organizations, which gives us, it's definitely a huge challenge, but it gives us a really unique perspective where we can more easily sort of connect the dots across all these different products and services. And we're not just designers. We have designers. We also have research as part of our organization. Writers, architects, artists, technologists. We all work together day to day, but then we all go and sort of take some of the exciting things we're working on out to the various business organizations inside of Adobe. This is often, of course, how we like to see ourselves, out there solving the problems, flaming sharks, astride our flaming sharks and everything. More often than not, this is how it goes, generally. But that doesn't mean we're ever dissuaded from the challenge. Again, like, this is a really geeky job. We do this for a reason. We like tools. And we really have this obsessive love for all tools, not just our own. And that's probably why we have all sort of gravitated towards this group that we work with, right? So, we have a bond with all the tools that we use as designers more generally. And we use these tools day in, day out. They become part of our identity. I've seen the photos of people with their tattoos of the Photoshop toolbar, and specifically the Photoshop CS3 toolbar. So things get really, really specific. And of course, again, we're just huge users of those tools. But what we've seen, and I think as we all seen, is that the tools that we know and love have really buckled under the weight and of the scale, in particular, of the projects and the problems we're solving now. Right, we're creating these experiences that cross many different screen sizes, have tens, dozens, hundreds of different screens and states, and we just saw, as an organization, just the tools that we know and love kind of buckle under the weight of the scale of these projects we're working on. Of course, we also need to augment our tool, our sort of bag of tools with new capabilities, like adding motion and interactivity to those tools. And again, this is a few years ago. This is kind of I'm sort of setting this is the pre-XD milieu, where we're all just trying to solve a problem and use whatever tool was available to help us do that. There's a saying that a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings, and I remember the first time I shared a prototype with my director, and I fooled him into thinking it was real, and that just had a huge impact. And from then on, everything that I did, static comps just weren't going to cut it. I needed anything that was going to allow me to create experiences that felt real. Of course, as we were trying out these new tools, again, as we just knew that our traditional bag of tools just wasn't cutting it, we were finding new ways to utilize that, new ways to communicate to that broader set of stakeholders and team members and developers that it really takes to make any digital product come to life, right? Like that's the thing, is that these problems that we're solving can no longer be solved by a small team, right? We're working at scale. We're working with dozens of engineers and dozens of business stakeholders. And so we really had, I saw it in my own, and this is a great example of one of the great artifacts that were generated by one of the designers. Again, in this time when we were really searching for those new tools, this was his design spec. And it was created using an interactive prototype, and this was amazing. Like the developers just ate this up. So we were just seeing us, again, designers taking the tools that they were adopting and doing really amazing things with them. Of course, here I have to have a moment of silence because when I first joined the organization, this was our tool of choice at Adobe. And again, part of this sort of crises that we were facing at the time with this tool landscape, in our own workflows, was that Adobe went and killed our favorite tool again, which was really sad. And I mean, from an outsider's perspective, it wasn't a great tool. But you know what? It did one thing really well. It was good for screen design workflows, right? All of those features were pointing you at an outcome that was for the screen. And that cannot be understated, the importance of that. Unfortunately, all of those features were packed into this, what I'll generously say is an inelegant panel. Like this was like the one panel to rule them all. Everything you need to do was right here in Fireworks. And that's probably why it was hard for someone who didn't work in it every day to really know how important it was. So it just wasn't a good looking app. All right, so here we are setting the stage. Fireworks is gone. We're adopting all these new tools, but it was still fractured. We were doing part of our workflow in one tool, doing part of another, workflow, visual design in one tool, prototyping in another, speccing back in the design tool. It was still a really broken process, and I'm really obsessed with process, and I'm really obsessed with speed. That's a theme you'll see later in this deck as well. I just want to work better, faster, stronger. I'm going to find those ways to shorten those times just spent spinning my wheels or updating a spec for the 5th, 6th, 7th final time. How do we just do that better? But building a new product at Adobe is no small feat. It is really, really hard, as I've found. So the first thing you're going to have to do when building a new tool is you've got to put together the right team. Right, but sadly these guys were unavailable, but it does take a little bit of the dreamer to be able to conceive of and actually pitch a new product at Adobe, and that's what we really sort of put together at that time. And also, as I had been working on various products in my time at Adobe, I had found that any great product at Adobe would start with 3 things, and if they didn't, it really wasn't a great product. Start really with the best of design, the best of business, and the best of engineering. And there, in the nexus of all that, is where you have possibly the opportunity to create a good, if not hopefully great product. Right? You need the best of design and experience, the best of, again, the knowledge of the market and the business needs that are out there, and you need the best of technology. And when you can connect those dots, that's where great product really happens at Adobe. Of course, you also have to get that team all on the same page once you have them together. And that can be a very testing, very intimate process sometimes. But luckily, at the start of Adobe XD, again, this feeling of this gap that we had in our portfolio, or this gap in the tool that we needed to do our own work, was really being felt, by a bunch of different people at the company, and we were just lucky enough to find each other at the right time. And we knew, and we can hit the ground running with we knew what we wanted to build. We wanted to build a tool that was for UX and UI design that really hit on all these notes, but also added that very important layer of motion and interactivity to our workflows. But also that aspect of being able to sort of get feedback and iterate very quickly. And really, this is one of the diagrams that I always go back to that really inspired us, was not just about the things that you can do with the product, but really what the process underlying the product is really fundamentally about. And for me, it's really about the creative process. How do we build an app that really reflected the way creatives work, right? And to me, it's all about this iterative cycle, where you make something, you share it with someone, you get that feedback, and you put that feedback right back to work inside whatever it is you're creating, right? And again, like as I was saying, I'm obsessed with speed. How do I put together the right set of tools to just make this loop faster? I remember just having in the back of my head always my instructors in school pushing me to show more and more ideas, every time I stood up to sort of show my work, because it's only through that work, through those iterations, that you come to the right solution. And you can see how this translated for us. We really wanted the core of the tool to be about that creative process, to really reflect that creative process. And so it's really reflected in this, again, design, prototype, and share. How do we build an app that allows designers to do this fast, do this very seamlessly, to not interrupt their workflows, to make sure that they can iterate and design as quickly as possible so they can get to that right solution. So, we had to start somewhere. And of course, again, like we followed the same process in building the tool as is reflected in the tool. So first, we just need an idea of what this is going to look like. And luckily, I came in very motivated with a bunch of ideas. In fact, this was the very first UI I designed. Before we started, I basically came to the first meeting with this UI already in hand. It was designed in Keynote, by the way, for just a little point of trivia. I love Keynote. So this was actually the very first UI I designed. But of course, there was a lot of this as well. There was a lot of defining those workflows. Design at Adobe. I didn't actually know there was a distinction between UX and UI when I first joined Adobe, because I came from kind of an outside studio world. I just thought this is how design works, and so it was really, I think, expected from all of us at Adobe. We kind of wear all those hats. It's a holistic endeavor for us. So we were sharing a lot of visual designs. We were also sharing a lot of kind of more UX, sort of architecture, workflow-based artifacts as well. Just some other UI sort of experiments. This is actually, I just love this one. Sorry, I found this as I was putting this talk together. This is my favorite version of the early XD UI. Very minimal. Nothing, all possibilities open, nothing available. I have to share that, so. Of course, we quickly wanted to move to a stage where we could make it feel real. And so I was lucky enough to be working with two of the smartest people I know from our engineering team. And we started taking these concepts that we had and really putting them into a usable prototype that we could put our hands on and actually get a sense of and feel of what this was going to start looking like. All right, and the more real this is going to be, the more valuable that feedback will always be for us. So we started with some, I forgot I added this in there. So basically the prototype's so important for us because I think in the past at Adobe, it took so long in building a product to get to something that was really real enough to test. And of course, then you sort of put all these resources in just to get something that was, again, you could just put in front of users. It was kind of worth their time. And our goal in this process was really to shorten that time to putting it into customers' hands. Our goal was always to put something testable into designers' hands as early as possible. And so that meant we spent a lot of time developing prototypes and ideas. So these are just some of the prototypes we did. We made some really crazy, weird prototypes. But we all had to kind of organize them at the end of the day to sort of reflect the patterns and the ways in which designers were actually going to be working and utilizing our app. And our one challenge that organized a lot of our early work was, can we design the Twitter feed in minutes? And so this was actually what became the repeat grid that you'll see in the product today. And of course, from there, immediately, this is sort of part of our DNA. We were sharing this work. We had a Slack channel from the very beginning that was open to all designers at Adobe, where they could come in, look at our process, see the things we were working on, give us their feedback, or test out builds, right here through this Slack channel. We also utilize tools like user voice in deploying our early builds. And this was a forum where users could actually give us feedback, suggest new features, and actually vote on them. So really exciting. And also we've dabbled in actually designing live on streaming services like YouTube. There's me down in the corner designing a feature live. So this is our journey so far, and it's been really amazing to kind of go from our early days internally working with designers, seeing them use our early prototypes, to getting something out into users' hands immediately, and actually be one of the first public betas available through the Creative Cloud downloader. Again, really paying off on that promise of digital distribution through Creative Cloud. And we've done monthly releases since those early builds of the beta, and we just launched our 1.0 release. So I had this whole section. I'm running out of time, unfortunately. On a kind of, again, as we scaled, how do we take all that spirit and all those ideas that we base the foundations of the app on and convey that to a much larger team, and make sure that, again, the spirit stays strong and we still are building on those foundational principles. So I'll quickly just share a few of those, as many as I can. So this is the sort of underlying one, and it's less a principle than maybe a statement, but it's something that we really hold ourselves to. Design at the speed of thought. That was kind of one of our first sort of taglines we came up with. And again, this is really about how do we help take all those, from the smallest details all the way up to the biggest part of the app, really help the app get out of the way and let designers design at the speed of thought. That there was no barrier, there was no multiple dialogue, multiple click step through. The thing just worked how you expected them to work, and they let your ideas just flow. And that also comes down to the performance of the application as well. We know, again, that we talked a lot about early on about the scale of projects, and we wanted an app that was native, that felt fast, that never lagged while you were using it. And so this is just me kind of panning around a really large file, and it holds up, which is great. This is key. This is the key one I always reinforce to my team. It's workflows, it's not features. We are really concerned that we don't want to end up like this. We love Illustrator, but there's no organization of this. It's really hard for any new user to jump into Illustrator. And so we really stated every time we sort of approach any new feature that it builds up and it actually adds up to something. And Adobe XD is for building mobile applications. So all the tools and all the features in XD are pointing you at that, just like I sort of mentioned the inspiration from Fireworks. All of these add up to making a great mobile interactive experience. Or icons. It's the same thing. All of these features taken on their own, you can do things with them, but it's when they're used in concert together where great things can happen. And this is the one, again, it's built into our DNA. User testing is always our #1 goal. So getting out there and making those connections directly, meeting with designers and finding out how they work and how they would like to work better or faster. Design can never yield also the one right answer. So you have to get to that end state as quickly as possible to get to see as many ideas as you can to find something that works. There.